I was sharing with you before we started recording. I had two friends recently check in parents. One was paying $5,000. The other one was paying $6,000 per month.
Yes.
Folks, okay, so already I believe that amount is more than the average Canadian makes in a month. So there's probably a problem there for most Canadians.
Well,
and then my problem is I and you said that was mid-range, and I'm saying, okay, I want better than mid-range for myself and my mom and my dad.
Right. So let's contrast those numbers with the numbers that you would find. Let's say, for example, let's take our mother, my mother, for example. She went into a long-term care home that was run by the municipality in Niagara, which many of them are.
Nice location.
Some of these places are private, like Chartwell. Some of the big companies do operate long-term care homes, but she was in a municipally run long-term care home. The province regulates the monthly fees, depending on whether you're in a single room, a double room, or 4 beds in a room. Our mother was paying, I'm going to say in rough numbers, it was around $2,400 a month for all of her medical care, for whatever food she was eating, and for whatever PSW care she was being given. That was her cost, about $2,400 a month. But what most people don't realize until they go to visit someone in a long-term care home, or they have to put a loved one into a long-term care home, they don't understand what they're like. These are not fancy places. I mean, we were so fortunate. Our mother was living in a really beautiful place. It was, well built, nicely decorated. It was a nice atmosphere. But at the end of the day, it's a very small room. It's not the Ritz. So for $2,400, those are your living conditions. For people who are more used to, living their life on their terms and living in maybe a little bit more luxury than that, that's when you're having to go to the private places like an Amico or a Seasons or a place like that, where these monthly fees can be anywhere from, I'm going to say, $5,000 to $7,000 or $8,000 or sometimes more $1,000 a month. And also what a lot of people don't understand too is that that could be the base fee. If you need to have medication administered, that's an extra charge. If you want us to go get your mail every day, guess what? That's an extra charge. So what starts out as $5,000 or $6,000 a month could easily escalate to much more. And on top of that, if you're in what they call the memory care wings, where you're getting extra added supervision and care, of course that's an extra charge. So, I mean, it would be nothing to go, to approach $100,000 a year to be living in one of these homes where you are paying extra to be cared for on a deeper level than just someone who's just there as a retiree, let's say, or someone who's there because they need some additional help getting dressed in the morning. There's money involved. And I think this takes us by surprise until it happens to us. And we can see through the experience we have with a parent or a loved one, like it really opens your eyes. It opened my eyes. I mean, I just realized, wow. I mean, if you want to spend the final days of your life in a place that's monitored by the government, where you pay $2,400 a month for everything, you can do that. But it's not a really nice way to end your life. And, at the end of the day, aren't we all here to have the best experience we possibly can for ourselves? Do we really want to settle for something like that? As an example, we're in the thick of summertime right now, right? There was a big controversy back in June, I think it was, that it is not, if you can believe this, it is not the law for every room in a long-term care home in Ontario to be air-conditioned. It is not the law. All they have to do to make the minimum standard is to have one room in the facility that is sort of like a cooling center, that is air-conditioned, that you could be wheeled to, let's say, to cool down. Come on. And I've made so many phone calls to MPP's offices over this. I'm getting tired of saying the same thing again and again. How can you do this to elderly people? But this is the government we're dealing with. And the sooner we realize that and we just start to deal with it, the better. And personally, I think the one way we can all, as real estate investors, start dealing with this is realizing that, maybe it's time to buy a property, hang on to it for 20 or 30 years if you're starting young enough, and dedicate that money to be the money that helps you in the final stage of your life live in a nicer place.
Yeah, even all my investment properties have air conditioning.
Can you imagine an elderly person who maybe has circulatory problems or a heart disease or something that ordinarily they have trouble regulating their body temperature and breathing, and you put them in a room where, maybe there's a little fan working, there's no air conditioning? It's inhumane.
Yeah.
It's inhumane.
Yeah.
But it's happening, and I think
Not
it's
surprised.
time people have to realize this. This is the reality of our system.
Right.
And if you don't want that to be your reality when you're 85 or 90 years old, you got to start thinking now, how am I going to plan for that? What kind of money am I going to need? How should I make that money?
So whenever I take in information, I'm always like, okay, what do I do with it, right? And I'm usually motivated to take action. A lot of things I don't do anything about. Like, for example, like you're calling your MPPs. I probably won't do anything. but I'm gonna make sure that that won't be a problem for my parents, my family, or myself, and my family.
Right.
Right. So for the listener, so that's just to preface this. You are a journalist. You're used to doing research. You're not like an emotional person.
No.
Not someone that just follows the crowd. So what should someone do? So you mentioned someone should buy a house and hold it for 20 years.
Well, as an example, I know that you have said publicly that you have bought a house for each of your children when they were born, to provide for their future. What's wrong with turning that idea on its head and saying, hey, maybe I should dedicate one of these houses to take care of me when I'm 90? If I need specialized help and I want to be in a nicer place than what the government is going to provide for me, why can't that be a new habit that people could get into? I think it would be a great way to, to help provide for ourselves and to do it in a way that is, pretty practical. We're not waiting for money to drop down from the sky. We're saying, wow, if I want to be in a nicer atmosphere when I'm 90 and maybe need help, I'm going to have to find the money to fund it. I mean, people fund their children's education all the time. They fund vacation homes. I think we are at the point in our society where we're going to have to start saying to ourselves, okay, how am I going to fund the final stage of my life?
And then I think people, like you said, people will fund their children's education. They'll do like lots of things for their kids. And then for some folks, they just plan to wait it out and try to wait it out, spend those final years keeping expenses down.
Hope for the best, right? We'll hope for the best. Well, it doesn't always work out that way.